I don't have to figure somebody out, but I can hold space for somebody to find answers and to figure themselves out. And that's pretty awesome.
Fundamentally, though, for me, it remains a mystery. It remains a wide open space of potential that I don't understand and that I will probably never fully experience.
I think the thing is that we don't need to know what it is, and that's the answer to all of it. But
Welcome, friends, to the Reiki Women podcast, an exploration into the profound depths of the system of Reiki from a Japanese spiritual perspective and how that relates to our modern lives.
we are keeping it real to Reiki's origins, challenging the New Age stereotype that things like crystals, chakras, and angels are authentic aspects of the system. I'm Bronwen Logan, and when I'm not writing best-selling books about the Japanese system of Reiki, 75,000 readers and counting, I'm here debunking outmoded Reiki myths and coaching individuals and groups through my website, Reiki with Bronwen.
And I'm Michaela Daystar, lead teacher and weaver of Heartscapes Reiki, connecting the dots between Reiki and environmental and social justice, because our individual healing cannot be extracted from healing relationship with the collective and with the land.
And I'm Carrie from the Reiki Healing Society, here to help you transform your Reiki practice into a thriving, prosperous business. Because while passion fuels your purpose, it's time to make it sustainable, authentic, and beautifully you. We're three women diving into the heart of Japanese Reiki. We're building a community that centers women's voices and inspires well-being. We're not just for women, we're for everybody. Come join the conversation.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Reiki Women podcast. If you've been with us for a while, you have undoubtedly heard us at one point or another make a specific distinction. And that's the distinction between Reiki as a phenomenon in the world, Reiki energy, a phenomenon that occurs in the world that we have a relationship with, and Reiki, the system of practice. In other words, the systems of practice, of thought, the concepts, the traditions that humans have developed over time in order to engage with that phenomenon. And we find it very important to make that distinction. We advocate that you too, dear listener, make that distinction between Reiki, spiritual energy, a phenomenon in the world, and the systems of human practice that have developed to help us react with and to be in relationship with Reiki energy. There's a lot of reasons why it's important to make that distinction, which we've discussed on other podcasts. But for today, we wanted to make a shift from the last couple of episodes where we have been very focused on that system of practice. We discussed from the perspective of Reiki practitioners and teachers, how they find their students and clients. We've talked about, for those of you seeking Reiki services, either to learn Reiki or to receive Reiki, how you go about finding a teacher or practitioner that's right for you. And in those conversations, we got to dig into the system of practice in a variety of ways. For today's episode, we wanted to shift our attention to Reiki as a phenomenon in the world, spiritual energy, and to just kind of let the mystery of that, the intriguing, delightful, unknown, and known aspects of that in our lives guide where the conversation leads us. And so with that, I'd love to turn it over to Carrie to just open up this deep well of mystery. How would you like us to enter into a discussion of Reiki?
Yeah, well, thank you, Michaela. I think just to mention too that you were really the inspiration for this topic, because last week when we were talking about Reiki teachers and how to find students, you kind of talked and alluded to one of the gifts or one of the joys of teaching Reiki is facilitating one into the mysteries of like being with the mystery of the spiritual energy, and how do we do that in a way that supports our students' growth and supports them to have, curious experiences, profound experiences, enlightening experiences, and so forth. So, yeah, that just sparked a lot of thought and inquiry for me, and just a lot of love, a love for Reiki. I mean, and that's just really where it like lands for me. It's just like there's this dogmatic piece of like, oh no, the system of Reiki is this, or this is how Reiki should be moving, and or this is how I should feel after a Reiki session. And then there's just this real gratitude for the practice of stepping into that mystery and just really being humble in some ways, of like being humble of that I'm touching into something that's so much bigger than myself, yet it is something that's actively seeking me too, and wanting that active participation that we're co-creating and um, healing space together. Deep desire in my own heart to just be in alignment with Reiki, living in alignment with Reiki, just because I've had so many amazing experiences with it, and I found it to be so pure and so healing and so wise. Um, so just wanting to, live my life from that place. Yeah, earlier today I was, working with my counselor and doing a session for, my own stuff. But we were, going through an intuitive meditation, and it was just really, I don't know, the sense that like there is this great mystery and this great wisdom, and that it's here and it's helping me, and it's helping me step into the things that I don't know yet, but it's guiding me and supporting me in my life. And that I can lean in and trust that. That's just such a beautiful thing. And, also just the joy of when we can get out of the way enough, and kind of lose the script about what our client wants or needs, and just show up for them and just provide the Reiki, and then usually there's always something really beautiful and insightful that comes through. So I'm just loving Reiki, just feeling all the love for the mystery. I don't have I can't pretend to think that I know it all. I don't, but it's pretty fascinating stuff. Like, and it doesn't get old. Years later, I'm still like blown away by the mystery. Still, and it's really exciting to see, um, students who've learned Reiki, or just clients who are experiencing it, like to have them see and feel the experience of Reiki, and like be so blown away by how profound it is, and the insights that they're getting. And I had just a first time client come to me last week, and oh my goodness, she was just like blown away. She's like, this is just like such an amazing treatment. Like, I can't believe it. And I'm like, so you were not the skeptical Reiki client that I'm always just so feel like I'm battling, like I'm like, or not battling, but you know, worried that my client is just laying there being like, nothing's happening, and instead she was just like, just so deeply in her own processing and releasing and letting go, and it was so helpful for her. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's just, that's so cool, it's so cool that I can just show up and be there, and I don't actually have to have the answers. I don't have to figure somebody out, but I can hold space for somebody to find answers and to figure themselves out. And that's pretty fucking awesome. Maybe you need to edit that F out. I'm sorry if you
I
do.
am pro F-bombs in podcasts, just for the record.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Not
there
for
you
the
go.
editor,
Pretty
but
fucking awesome.
yeah.
So that's all I want to say. Or that's what first comes to mind, and I'd love to pass it over to you, my dear mentor teacher Bronwen, because I'm sure you have something quite wise and profound to share with us too.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think the thing is that we don't need to know what it is, and that's the answer to all of it. But it is helpful to look at what Usui said about it. And he said, you don't need to believe in it. There's nothing about it that says, I have to believe this. And that I think is interesting, because if it's not about that, then it's very much, I guess, the opposite of that, which is the letting go. So really what we need to do is to just let go into it. I was making last year or this year these cute little images with Reiki is and dot 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 and then and adding something to that. You could make them forever because really it is everything. When you were talking just now, Carrie, I was thinking in my head, I was going, oh, Reiki is life. It is just life. And the more we can let go into our lives, the more that we can then be in that flow. And Usui said that he based the system, Reiki Ryoho, so the method, yeah, he based it on what, well, the translation says the power of Reiki. So that's what he based it upon. As we were saying, all that structural stuff that we do is all there because of Reiki. And I know a long time ago when I was talking to Hyakita Ninamoto and asked, what is Reiki? And he said that it was something big. He said, Rei means big, so big energy. And looking at descriptions of this in Reiki works, the small amount that we have, they talk about it being the microcosm and the macrocosm. So it's the macrocosm of everything. It's that bigness of everything, but it's also the microcosm at the same time, which is this idea that we are Reiki, but we are also in Reiki. It has both those opposite elements living together. Sui said, I can't explain what it is. I don't know. I worked hard for it, he says. Yeah. So he did a lot of work to be in this space. But then he says, you don't have to believe in it. And most amusingly, he says, you don't have to believe in it, but do a treatment on someone and then see how they feel. Because they don't need to, like you were saying, Carrie, they don't need to believe in it. And in fact, if they can just let go into it, then see how they feel afterwards. And then there is, I guess you could call it a belief. It's an experience. And through the experience of something, we know it. I feel that every time that I do a Reiki treatment. So I'm sort of outside in my world like this, and then I go into this space of being in this, and I can't explain that, but being in this space of doing a treatment, and there I am. And it amazes me every time that I feel that life, that fullness of life, of being a part of everything and still being me at the same time.
Love that. I love, Carrie, that you started us with the concept of mystery and that, attempt at putting words to the nameless things of the world, of talking about facilitating an experience with the mystery. And then Bronwen, you really took that in the direction that was meant by that statement. Relating to Reiki as a mystery has been really important for me. And, as we entered into this conversation for today, I was reflecting a bit on out of my experience with relationship to the divine. And because I've never really had a sense of, I guess you could say, belief. I love that you quoted that you don't have to believe in it, right? Because I didn't have a belief in a God or gods or, a consciousness, a higher power consciousness. Like that just has never resonated with me. And not that I am like, that absolutely doesn't exist, but with the way that I always kind of felt it and explained it is like, I have not had an experience in my life that tells me or shows me that that is true. And, some people would say, well, you don't have to have an experience. You can choose to believe it without having that experience, right? Some people do have incredibly powerful experiences that lead them to believe that there is a God and that is a consciousness, that there's a relationship there that can be developed. And I was always, to be perfectly honest, a little jealous of those people because they had something to believe, right? And they had some experience in their life that solidified that experience for them. And I didn't have that. And so for the longest time, I kind of felt that that made me an atheist, a non-believer, a not a spiritual person. I kind of had a vague sense of like spirituality, but not really, because I didn't have a practice, I didn't have a point of focus, I didn't have all of these structures that you're talking about to help us. And really what it came down to is like I needed to begin with an experience. And I didn't. And the only thing that came close to that was profound moments that I had had in natural spaces, right? So direct experience with nature was the closest thing I had. And so, that was enough for a long time. And at a certain point, it became not enough. And I became dissatisfied with like not having any kind of structured or robust spirituality in my life. And I did join a Christian church at that point, explored that tradition, which I'd always been very averse to because of my upbringing. And that was very valuable, actually. I really was able to understand that viewpoint quite a bit better, to have, much more appreciation for the perspectives that exist inside of that faith tradition. But it didn't bring me to a point of belief, and it didn't bring me to a point of adopting Christianity as my religion or my spiritual perspective on life, outside of the fact that it's well steeped into American culture. So it's like, I definitely have a Christian outlook because it is part of our culture, but it's not my spirituality. So, fast forward to finding Reiki, which I really, I often think about it as being kind of tricked into it by the universe. We have this trickster energy, this like foolish energy in the world that can kind of topsy-turvy us to the direction we're supposed to go when we're not paying attention. As I've shared before on this podcast, I came to it really from the perspective of wanting a healing modality for myself and others, primarily for others. It was a very codependent relationship at first. But inside of that, seeking a way to be a healer or to, whatever my thoughts were about that, I kind of got tricked into having experiences that started to tickle that sense that, yes, there is something here that I can't see. And it doesn't really matter what I name it, right? It doesn't matter if I believe in it, like you said, Bronwen. What matters is what are the experiences that I'm having with it? And is there a relationship there? And, that really solidified when I found the path that, the three of us walk with Reiki's origins, because of the way that this path and this tradition allows us to hold the mystery lightly and to really be in relationship with life. Like you said, Reiki is life. Like that feels very true to me. That feels like something I can believe. To really develop that relationship based on engagement, curiosity and engagement, and then clearly noticing the impact of that engagement, right? What is the experience that I'm actually having? And belief becomes unimportant at that point, right? Because then we're simply observing what our senses are experiencing. And it's like we can't fully distinguish exactly, as people trying to communicate with language to other people, the phenomenon of Reiki from the system of practice, because the system of practice is there to help us even talk about it. Like, how do we even express to other people or to ourselves what it is that we're experiencing? And I love that, right? I love how creative and tenacious humans have been over our entire existence to try to understand to whatever degree we can, and then share our experiences with the mystery. Fundamentally, though, for me, it remains a mystery. It remains a wide open space of potential that I don't understand, and that I will probably never fully experience until, I don't know, I'm enlightened or I die or something else happens. I don't know. But I think part part of what I've come to be so in love with Reiki as a phenomenon. Yes, the system of practice, but Reiki as a phenomenon in the world is that it it doesn't matter what I think about it. It doesn't matter how I describe it. It doesn't matter what I believe about it. It just matters that I can find the fortitude and the diligence to turn my attention towards it on a regular basis. And we have a system of practice to help us to do that, right? How do we turn our attention to it? Where do we place our focus? How do we touch? How do we dip our toe into that deep pool of mystery that is ever present? And that's really like how I described the moment that I truly experienced Reiki, which wasn't until 3 years into my journey. And it was when I discovered your written works, Bronwen, and the practices that your written works explain and describe, and was facilitated to in what I now know to be a variation of Joshin Kokyuho, to have an experience of placing my focus correctly. I'll put that in quotations, but I do actually mean it correctly, so that I could begin to touch that pool of mystery. Just get my little toe just on the edge of the pool, you know? And it was such a revelation, because until that point, when I still thought of Reiki as a healing modality, a system of things that you do to heal other people, primarily, maybe me, but mostly other people, was so limited, right? It was transactional almost. And I could sense that there was this pool of mystery there, but there did not seem to be a way to access it inside of how I was practicing at that time. And that's not to say that that's everyone's experience inside of Western Reiki. That was my experience. I did not find, or was not given, a pathway to let go of those goals of what I was going to do with Reiki and just experience it. And now, 8 years after that point, that transition point, it's still just as mysterious. I haven't figured it out, but I sure have experienced it a lot, enough that I have found my own words, my own, sometimes clumsy, sometimes eloquent, always imperfect, always inadequate, but good enough, my own words and my own ways to share what I'm experiencing with other people, and to better lock it into my own mind, because we are so language oriented as people. And that, has been a really beautiful blending of Reiki, the phenomenon, the mysterious phenomenon in the world, and Reiki as a system of practice that gives humans access to better engage with it, right? In an intentional way, because of course we're engaging with Reiki all the time. And we have these spontaneous moments. Like when I think back to certain moments in nature, when I felt an otherworldly experience, happen, it happened spontaneously. Like we have these spontaneous experiences with Reiki, with the mystery, with God, however we want to name it. But the system of practice allows us to intentionalize that and to operationalize it in a way that gives us access to it. And what I have found is that sorrow and anxiety that had been kind of below the surface, like not big, but like present for most of my adult life, that I don't have a thing to believe in. I haven't had an experience with anything that gives me a sense of whatever the divine is, and therefore I don't have a system of practice, and I don't have a spirituality, right? Like I don't feel attached to those feelings anymore, because I have a pathway to have direct experiences. So that's where I'm at.
So fascinating. And it's so interesting how, our childhood, our upbringing, our initial experiences about life and spirituality kind of can shape, so much of our belief systems about it. But that we can change them too, right? Like you said, I wanted to seek out these experiences, and so I did. And you have had different experiences over your journey as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum though, because I was raised with such an incredible spiritual community and orientation, and being born and raised in a fundamentalist Christian culture, spirituality was just such a big part of my upbringing and my, spiritual religious orientation as a child. But still, there was so much desire inside of me to unpack that and really question authority, question spirituality, question the whole journey and process, because I wasn't really seeking the dogma of the Christian faith, for example, and in fact, a lot of the dogma really harmed me, and was really impactful in a negative way. But I was seeking, truth. I was seeking the essence of spirituality and really trying to understand it. I like how Bronwen, you said something about like when you feel it, and that's kind of much more important than any words or descriptions or descriptives about it. So I often like to say to my students, those who feel it know it. Those who feel it know it. You know it when you feel it. And I'm just thinking back, and I don't know if this is an appropriate part of the conversation or whatever, but I'm just journeying through some of my own really profound spiritual experiences. And a couple of them just kind of come to the surface for me. Um, well, one was that I've always had musculoskeletal pain. So, like, just like my ribs out of whack, my neck's out of whack, my low back's thrown out, and so that's one of the reasons why I sought out yoga. um, had kind of suffered from this like my whole life, and I've always been going to a chiropractor or something like that. So, in my 20s or early 30s, I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure it was after I found Reiki, but this wasn't even necessarily a Reiki experience. But I've been going to this osteopathic doctor for many years, and she would crack my back and just kind of set me back into place. And she was a big resource for me with all the stuff that I had going on at that point in time. But so very familiar with going to this doctor's office, went there one day, had this just kind of very routine check-in experience. And then we would do, oftentimes they would put some like hot towels on my back and just use some heat therapy before the adjustment. So I was laying down and had this hot heat pack on my back, and I just relaxed and softened. And I don't know really what happened, but I had this profound experience where I was just transported, and I felt like I went through this like white light and this green light, and I was just went somewhere. And it was like I had this experience of spirituality or healing that always strikes, when I think back on it, it strikes me as profound, because it's like I didn't generate that, I didn't try that, it's just something that came to me. And it wasn't like I earned it either, like I think there's sometimes this mentality, oh, like I have to be a really good person, and then maybe I can have these spiritual experiences or whatever. It was just like this random day, in the middle of nothing. But I had this, um, I mean, I just felt like I was just completely in touch with something that was peace itself, like love itself, healing itself. And yeah, it changed me. It rocked me to my core. And I'm thinking of another experience that I had that was more Reiki related. It's still not quite Reiki related, but I'll bring it back to Reiki. But I was doing a yoga class, and I was doing a type of yoga. It's called yoga nidra, which is a form of sleep, like a yogic sleep, where you're kind of guided into this space, like right below, right before you're sleeping, and you're kind of lucidly awake. And it can be a really powerful gateway into your subconscious and relaxation and healing. Well, the yoga nidra teacher was talking about visualize a flame in your third eye. Visualize this flame, and I was deep in that space, the subliminal space, right? Where I'm like half asleep, half awake. And I kind of snapped out of it for a moment and realized that like I had experienced like this beautiful like fire in my third eye. And that was the energy that I was feeling in that moment, and that was kind of brought me back to the power of focus and a guided meditation. Um, and so how I'd like to, and then, walking away from that experience, I don't remember anything about that or any of the realizations that I had, but I remember feeling like it wasn't just a visual, it was a feeling like I had become one with that visual and I was experiencing that, that experience came to me as energy too. It wasn't just something I was thinking about. It was something that I was feeling. I was feeling energy moving through me that way. Um, so how that relates to Reiki is that like well, first of all, it's just the power of our mind, right? We link our mind and our consciousness to something, and there can be some profound experiences through that. But also, as a facilitator for others, I'm just reminded of how helpful it can be to just, in a meditation, for example, focus on your mind. Focus on your mind. I recently filmed 3 practices for my Shonen students. So I have this practice journey that I've been filming and building out. And it was 1 practice for each of the 3 diamonds. So the hara, the head, and the heart. And I remember when filming for the mind, for example, I was like, kind of just talking about it, doing a guided meditation. And then I stepped away from facilitating and realized like there was this incredible energy all through my mind and my head. And I had built a focus there. And that in that focus, energy was really moving and shifting. And I was feeling something, I was having an experience of feeling. Not necessarily knowing exactly what it was or what it was there to do, but just to say that I felt that, and it was helpful to me. And yeah, so as somebody who's has experienced those mysteries and sought them out, now they're almost a daily part of my life, and I can look back at the day and I can reflect back on the magic that I witnessed that day and how special that was. And for me, that's also so helpful for feeling more alive, and maybe that's some of the spark and sparkle of life is that there's this mystery, there's this joy, there's this unknowing and knowing as well, and that we get to just dance in that mystery and feel held in a bigger picture of life. It's just yeah, something I'm just super grateful that I found this practice. So, and for you all that we can just sit here, and I think this is a 172nd episode or something like that. Can you believe that? Can we 172 conversations, and we're still going strong. Still so much to talk about.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure I've got a lot more to add. I mean, I think that for me, it feels very much about, I know I said that thing about life before, but I can see that in so many different ways. I can feel that what I want to do is I want to bring those moments that I spoke about, just going into a Reiki treatment and being there in that space and knowing that space. I really just want that to be my normal everyday existence in my life. I want it to be mundane. I want it to be just that's what it is. I don't want necessarily to have spontaneous sort of things or anything like that. I just want to know it in a more permanent way. Because for me, I don't really have this idea of it being something amazing, even though it is. It's those words again. You're saying, Carrie, it's so hard to explain something, isn't it? But I don't want it to be something amazing. I just want to be that and to live that and to have that knowing there in a sort of a perpetual way. That's my aim for my practice. So, yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to say about that.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And once again, and this is what happens when you step into synchronicity with folks. It's like the word choices in this conversation are really sparkling for me. That term mundane, I want it to be mundane. Like, yeah, exactly. I often think about or talk about the mundane, miraculous nature of life. That, we go through life doing our thing. But, if we pause at any given moment, really pay attention to what's happening and what's going on around us, what's life doing, what's happening in my body, I'm digesting something. Whoa, like when we really pay attention to what's actually happening,
Amazing.
we're,
Yes.
we're surrounded by miracles all the time. And the mystery, we're surrounded by mysterious stuff all the time. Like, wow, I sure can't explain that. Maybe a scientist has some kind of explanation, but even that isn't really telling us what that is. And that, and I think, to your point, Bronwen, walking a path such as this, especially one that, which most spiritual practices have some, at least some element of the casual daily engagement, right? Is that more and more often we can experience the paradox, the simultaneity of life is a fucking miracle. I'm going to piggyback off you, Carrie. I'm going to drop some F-bombs here. It's a miracle. Like, it's so crazy when we just stop and pay attention to almost anything that's happening. And at the same time, it's completely ordinary. It's entirely mundane. It is simply the way things work. And we do have a choice. We absolutely each have a choice about how much attention we pay to that. And for some people, it's zero attention. I mean, there's people in my life I'm thinking of right now who like would be like, mystery, what? Miracles of life. I mean, science can explain all of that. And then I'm like, but isn't that cool? Like, isn't science kind of a form of like miracle working? Like, come on, like, let it in, let it penetrate, let it permeate a little bit deeper than skin deep. Like, let it in, right? We all have a choice at how much we allow in the miraculous nature of life. And then paradoxically, how much we allow the startling miracle of life and the mystery to become daily life, to become ordinary, to become mundane. And more, that defines enlightenment to me. I mean, I remember thinking like, oh, enlightenment, like you're walking around. Well, first of all, I thought it meant you died because I had a died and gone to heaven like concept of what that meant. So for the longest time, from when I first read Siddhartha in like fifth grade or whatever and discovered this concept of enlightenment, I just thought that meant, well, you died and you went to heaven. That's what that means. And then it was like, no, it seems like people are still supposedly alive, going through their life. They're enlightened. So what does that mean, right? And then it was like, I have no idea. How can you be this like spiritually enlightened being and you're just going about your daily business? Like, what does that actually mean? And, more and more, it's like, oh, you're engaging with the day to day, with the mundanity of daily life, with your heart and your mind open to the mystery and like allowing yourself to be permeated by that as you make your breakfast and do your dishes and plant the garden and call your friend and take a walk, feed the dog. It's like all of that gets to be simultaneous in our life. And I more and more feel like that's what Reiki has given me, is the ability to no longer feel that spirituality and daily life are these two separate worlds. And I'm spending too much time over in daily life and I'm not getting enough spirituality or vice versa. Yeah, I think it's just that simple. Mundane miracles. That's where I'm going to land the plane.
Well, just to follow up on that, I think of what you were just saying right there, of just like any given moment when I can stop and pay attention to what's really going on around me. I
Yeah.
think that's so much of what the system of Reiki helps us do, and to find those pauses where we become fully conscious of all that's around us. And in that moment, really profound realizations can happen, or mundane ones. I'm just being like, wow, oh my God, yeah, I'm aware of this. And like, it's like not just this, like, underneath the surface kind of thing. Um, there's something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, and it's the worry too. So I often ask my, friends in the world of Reiki, I say, how much time do you spend worrying or being angry? You know,
Mm.
and it's exactly those kind of planes of consciousness that block us from exactly what you're talking about, Michaela. So if we're just so in our head worried about everything, you can't be aware of, oh wow, I'm digesting food, my body's healthy, you know. Or like, oh yeah, like all this amazing things happening to me and it still isn't loosening that grip of worry and fear and anger. um Maybe there's something wrong with that, right? We have to let go and be in a different state. So, anyways, that's
Yeah.
a little other thing that I wanted to throw in the mix before I know our time together is almost done here.
It is, in fact. So we'd love to hear from you, dear listener. What has been your experience engaging with the mystery? What are the words that you have found to help try to craft a description of your experiences when there really perhaps is no description? Or where are the places that you've struggled with that? We'd really love to know. We'd love to continue the conversation down in the comments below. Of course, if you'd like to hear more from us, we would love for you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it with somebody who is similarly seeking their own experiences with the mystery, or maybe the ones who are like, I don't know, I don't care about that. Maybe invite them into the conversation with us. Let it permeate a little bit deeper. We would love to talk with them as well. And so, friends, until next time, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.